Our first speaker for today's session is the project coordinator of the, okay, I lost my, wait a minute. He's the project coordinator, and Natural Resources, AFNR, Knowledge Platform and Research and Thought Leadership Department of Southeast Asian Regional Center of Graduate Study and Research in Agriculture, or SEARCA. His work aims to contribute to an enabling environment that will accelerate agricultural innovations by creating opportunities for knowledge sharing and learning with various stakeholders. Colleagues, let us welcome Mr. Jerome Barradas for his talk on overview of science communication. You have the floor, Jerome.
Thank you, Ma'am Ola, and a good day to all of our participants. Let me share my screen first. There. Do you see my screen properly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I again bring you warm greetings from Laguna in the Philippines. As Ma'am Ola mentioned, I am Jerome from SEARCA. At this point, I would like to thank the organizers, BCP, CropLife, our closest partners at SEARCA, for the opportunity to be with you today and to be able to share with you an overview and our experiences in doing science communication. So before I begin, let me ask you first, how many of you among here have children? Please feel free to use the chat box in answering. No? Just say me, no? Or I have children. I'm waiting for 1 or 2 responses so that I can be sure that you're listening. Okay, Irish has kids. Oh, okay, we have a lot of responses. Even Ma'am Ola responded, I have kids. Have you been the subject of their unending questions about things happening around us? Sparked by their curiosity, they would tirelessly ask why is the sun yellow? Why are the clouds white? Why? Most of us, can you relate to this? I hope so. Or perhaps if you don't have children yet, you can reminisce and think of the time that you also asked your parents, why? Most of us went through this phase when we were kids, when we were so thirsty, to understand how and why things work. So this natural curiosity to understand the things around us makes me believe. It makes me believe that people, why is my slide not moving? Okay, people are natural scientists. Processing and understanding information is part of our daily life. We may just dismiss it because we are already too familiar with it already, especially as adults. No? But we do science daily. It is a part of our everyday life. We are no strangers to science. And perhaps in some way, we can say that science is life. And there are certain examples that we can think of, seeing how we apply the science and the scientific process in seemingly non-scientific ways. For example, love life. For those who are happily married or in relationships, you try to remember. We try to explore and see if the relationship works. We try to find what works, and we invest time, resources, and even our emotions just to make it work. And if it won't work well, that's another story altogether. This morning, I was cooking fried rice from last night's leftovers. I ended up making it too salty. So I added more leftover rice just to balance things out. So this trial and error, the knowledge that I would have to add more leftover rice to balance out the saltiness, and that saltiness is not good, is a probably a part, we can say that it's part of our day-to-day scientific experiences that we are not just minding. In our farming practices too, no? We know by experience and by repeated occurrences that by a certain month it is best to it is the best time to plant a certain crop, and that you would count several months and you should prepare already for nutrient management, or for example harvesting already. So today, you know, communicating science is as important as doing the science in laboratories as well. I'll repeat that. Communicating it effectively is as important as doing the research behind the science. You know, we were told that research not communicated is research not done. And taking it from the Philippine national scientist Helia Castillo, we should remember that science must serve a human purpose. And this is where SciComm enters the picture. According to Velasco in 2005, SciComm fosters understanding, appreciation, and application of science and the scientific process in a way that encourages participation. SciComm aims to inform and engage with each other about scientific innovations that affect our lives. I'm sure that you have encountered types of SciComm from before. And perhaps just like and perhaps you have already done SciComm without you realizing it. Have you encouraged a fellow farmer to try a certain variety because of through your repeated use by your experience, you have proven it to be superior because it is less susceptible to diseases, it gives you good yield, etc. During this pandemic, have you taught your child or perhaps your friend on why it is important to wear a mask properly? You know, this reminds me, I have neighbors who have hesitancy when it comes to getting vaccinated. And so I would like to encourage them to be vaccinated because science proves that it is one of the solutions so that we can be safer from this pandemic. So somehow I was trying to use the analogy that, for example, wearing your mask, doing all the health and safety protocols is like having an umbrella underneath heavy rains. Okay? It will protect you, but there's a high chance of you getting wet still because you're under heavy rain. Now, vaccination, I would like them to imagine vaccination as a raincoat which covers you. So it doesn't mean that you won't get wet, but during heavy rain, I'd rather have a raincoat and an umbrella to make sure that I am protected. So I think hopefully that description helped them understand the need for vaccination. And I'm happy to note that they have all been vaccinated right now. So there are different ways that we do science communication. And through the next slides, I would like to invite you to see how we can do it together, especially when it comes to biotech crops. You know, our current situation, climate crisis, concerns over new technologies that include products of modern biotechnology, even the pandemic, demand for a clear discussion, a sound strategy. So we begin with identifying what. We have to know what. SciComm involves transmission of scientific ideas, methods, knowledge, and research in an accessible and useful way. But before we are able to do this, we should first know who. The first step is knowing your audience. It is important to listen and to maintain a good relationship with our stakeholders. In this process, they are not just beneficiaries, but are partners. And these partners, these different stakeholders, have varying needs, interests, attitudes, and levels of knowledge. They may require varying ways or varying approaches to be able to become aware, to appreciate, understand, and hopefully be willing to apply science and the scientific process in their daily life. Knowing our audience would help us in developing a good communication plan with a good set of communication objectives that meet the needs of our stakeholders. Again, before we are able to transmit information, we should first ask who our audience is. SciComm uses appropriate skills, different forms of media, activities, and even dialogue to produce awareness, appreciation, and understanding of science. So we have different ways of transmitting information. One such example is having different knowledge sharing activities. So in my slide this morning, this afternoon for most of us, okay, there's a tip, find Ma'am Ola there because she's there. These are different knowledge sharing activities that we've done in the past, pre-pandemic, and our virtual programs now that we have to be avoiding gatherings. No? So during these knowledge sharing activities, we bring experts and give an opportunity for our stakeholders to talk to them, to discuss things with them, and to hear it straight from the developer's mouth. There's a saying, to hear it straight from the horse's mouth. In such opportunities, we are able to eliminate middlemen and go straight to the point and ask it to the experts themselves. Sometimes, I'm fond of using visualization or analogy. I can share one thing that I usually do in the past when it comes to communicating about science or tools about science. Let me share one example is RCM, or the Rice Crop Manager. I'm sure most of you, especially our participants from the Philippines, are familiar with RCM. So RCM gives advice on three things: how much nutrient, what kind of nutrient, and when do you apply such. So I compared it to our human body. First, what kind of nutrient or what kind of fertilizer? So if the person is diabetic, means high blood sugar content, you won't give that person sugary or sweet food. In the same way, in our plants, if the soil or the plants are already rich in something else, you don't need to add that anymore. That's a waste of resources. Another one is the amount of fertilizer. So we can only we only have that point wherein we are already full. For example, most of us have already taken their lunch. We cannot absorb more than what we can. And it's the same way with plants. The extra ones are just wasted, and it's money lost. In a similar way, we also need to, the third function is to know when you apply it. So comparing it to a human person, you don't eat by the hour. You eat during regular gaps or intervals so that you'd be able to absorb. Because if you eat every 30 minutes, you won't be able to absorb it. And perhaps it would still even be bad for you. So these knowledge sharing activities would also include the production of knowledge materials. So we have here some examples of the work we are doing. So we have a newsletter, we produce different information sheets, no? Fact sheets, infographics, policy briefs, and even videos to convey information in a clear, understandable, accessible way. If you see the icon at the lower left, the one with the human brain, no, that's the logo of our social media campaign that we've implemented with ISA. It's called Know the Science, and it's done through Facebook primarily, and we meet our stakeholders there and provide them with easy to understand and relevant information on biotech crops. So the next part in doing SciComm is knowing why. It is not enough that our stakeholders know that a certain technology exists. It is not enough for them that, oh, there is a biotech crop that is available. They should also understand its importance and relevance in their daily lives. SciComm must not end in mere information sharing. I'd like to repeat that. SciComm doesn't end in mere information sharing. It is equally important that the stakeholders appreciate and understand why such scientific innovations exist. During the first day of this farmer exchange program, Dr. Russell Ranke discussed golden rice. I hope that by now it is now very clear why we need golden rice as an option, as an additional option to address the problem of hidden hunger, specifically that of vitamin A deficiency. Next is to know how. Knowing how is equally important to knowing what and why. We can, our stakeholders can ask questions. How does this work? How will I be able to adapt and apply such scientific innovations or biotech crops, for example, in my field? We all know that knowing does not automatically translate to practice. Knowledge doesn't always lead to a change in behavior. Stakeholders need an enabling environment for them to be incentivized to apply what they know in their fields. Let me share you a story. A few years ago, I was having lunch with an international scientist, an entomologist, he shared that during farm visits, a large part of the farm will be dedicated to commercial planting, and then a small parcel will be reserved for personal consumption. In the lot allotted for personal consumption, the farmers practice everything that they know that is good, that is coming from science, the lessons that they've received from extension workers. So they apply it for the food that they're gonna eat. It's a different story, I was told, about the commercial farm just beside it. In his experience, I'm just telling the story here. in his experience, farmers do differently. There is a different farm practice that may not necessarily, that may not be guided by what they know. So his conclusion was, sometimes we should not assume that farmers do not know, because they know. They just need an enabling environment to be able to apply what they know. So just a quick recap. So we were looking at what the scientific innovation is, why such exists, and how would our stakeholders be able to use or to do that. Okay. Um, Challenges. There are certainly some challenges in doing science communication, especially in the area of communicating products of modern biotechnology. First, it is highly technical and abstract. It's difficult to imagine a gene or a cell and the DNA, for example, wherein you can uh, edit it. You know? It's difficult to imagine, especially for untrained, for the untrained, for the layperson. It is perceived to be unrelatable, boring, and so we have to be a bit more creative when it comes to doing science communication. To be able, and we should be very careful to be able to communicate without sacrificing scientific accuracy. And in this area, it is very important that we go hand in hand with our technical experts, with our scientists. I am not a scientist. I'm a communicator by profession. So in my experience, I always consult, I work together with my scientists so that we will be able to deliver information without diluting the facts. So the example I placed here was project. So a scientist published a journal article, and there is a need for her to be able to communicate what is written in the journal for the masses. This is about frogs in the field. So the main objective was to help the audience identify and be familiar with the frogs and why it is important for the environment, for the rice field environment. So we chose chocolate frogs. It's a small scale project, but we made sure that we are consulting our scientists from time to time so that we will be able to communicate the science properly. Next. The work we do in science communication, particularly in biotech communication, is linked to complex concerns. There's safety for both people and for the planet. Will that be detrimental in the long run? Will there be allergies, etc.? There are also environmental concerns. What will happen if this gets cross-pollinated with our traditional varieties? There are concerns about biodiversity loss, and there are issues about the socio-political aspect, poverty, land reform, globalization. And there is also socio-economic concerns about, will it really generate this income? How will patents affect this? Or how would labeling affect the products, etc. So it's not just about the science. It's a whole complex matter. We can also see that there is low coverage of science in mainstream media. For example, in the Philippines, I'm only familiar with some. I'm not sure if these shows are still on the air. And primarily the target are for in mainstream media, the target are young ones. How about the ones young would also need regular updates or source of knowledge on science. Finally, another challenge is misinformation or sensationalism. This is very prevalent these days. You know, our access to social media has a lot of benefits, but we sometimes feel that we are inundated with information. And we have to be more critical in identifying which information to accept as the truth. So we have to check our sources, we have to verify our facts, so that we'll avoid being a spreader of fake news. The question is, what now? No, SciComm is closely linked to informed decision making in making viable options understandable, usable, and accessible. SciComm must empower its stakeholders to be able to find a workaround to solve their problems using effective solutions that science offers them. And SciComm helps us think again, raise questions again. So there are many concerns that we face today, and it's not really just about science. We saw the complex environment we are living, and communication is an important factor in creating an enabling environment for us to realize the potential of science, the potential of biotech crops. More than ever, we must be able to regain our childhood curiosity, to ask why. We should always be thirsty for knowledge, to participate actively in the process of science communication, so that we'd be able to make informed, potentially life-changing decisions. Let me end with a dare. Coming full circle, let me end with a dare to go back to our childhood and dare to be childlike. Don't be afraid. Don't get tired of asking questions and in being part of the process of gaining and sharing knowledge. So I think this sums up the role of science communication, a quick overview of what it is, how we are doing it, why we are doing it, and the challenge to be childlike and never get tired of asking questions. Once again, thank you to the organizers and thank you for listening.